of racial and economic equity goals, along with clean energy targets and more sustainable urban planning and transportation initiatives for our region. Of course, many of these goals involve funding. So along comes COVID-19 and the George Floyd murder and the protests, and a hugely raised consciousness around issues of equity, but also tremendous stress on our economy, on our people, lots of job cuts, and shortfalls in revenue across many departments, municipalities. So let's hear about the plans, especially the equity aspects of those plans, and then how we're adapting those plans to these new circumstances. The way we're going to do this is we're going to hear from each of our very impressive guests here. They're going to tell us about their plans from the vantage point I've just laid out. Then we'll go into a dialogue that will last probably about 20 or 25 minutes. And then we'd love to take questions. If you have questions, please type them into the Hoover platform. If your question is for a specific person, please indicate who. So let's now move to our sustainability chiefs, and we're going to start at the county. I'm sort of taking on the metaphor of a tree and suggesting that the county is the tree trunk and the branches peel off from the tree. So we're starting with Gero. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer at the County of LA, first appointed in 2016, previously president at Climate Action Reserve, now serves as the vice chair on its board of directors. His career has included service as the assistant general manager for the City of LA's Environmental Affairs Department. He also managed renewable and energy efficiency programs at LA DWP. Welcome, Gary.
Yeah, well, thank you, Frances, and it's so great to have you as the moderator of this panel. I've been a big fan for many years and always appreciate your insights, and I also want to thank Ben and the whole USGBC LA team. It's hard to put these events on. It's hard to put these events on during this time, but you're doing an incredible job, so thank you so much. So yeah, I want to I guess open with the real basics, which is, usually you define sustainability typically as the 3 E's, right? The environment, the economy, and equity. And people always say, well, these are co-equal as we're looking at how we're implementing the idea of sustainability. But, as we looked back at sustainability plans, and we did a comprehensive assessment from around the world, frequently, all too often really, equity seemed to have gotten the short shrift. So we really wanted to put that at the center of our plan, and I'll talk about why. But I also want to talk about what our intentions were with our plan. First of all, it is a regional plan. It's a plan for the entire county, not just for the unincorporated areas, because the issues that we're talking about here, whether it's stormwater or the urban heat island effect or transportation, you think about streets, they traverse many jurisdictions along their path. They just don't stop at city borders. And so we worked with cities on the development of the plan. We're bringing them in again later this year to talk to them about the plan and how we implement. But we also worked really closely with Lauren and her team in the city of LA as they were going through their own planning process to make sure that we were aligned. So I think that that's the first intention. The other is that we wanted this plan to be ambitious. We really wanted a robust plan that was visionary for what we were trying to achieve in LA County, and we wanted it to be comprehensive. So it is not just traditional environmental media, of course, but it's things like public health and housing and homelessness, which we heard a lot about as we were out in the community, and workforce development and land use, as you alluded to. And I won't go into a lot of the details because it's a big plan, there's a lot in it, but we set some pretty ambitious targets in there, like eliminating fossil fuels and getting to carbon neutrality and reducing single-use plastics and maximizing local water resources. But what I really want to talk about is how we looked at this question of equity in our efforts. And as we started this process, it was clear that equity had to be part of our program, and the recent events certainly have only crystallized the need for that. And what we knew going in was that 1/2 of all of the census tracts that the state of California deems as severely disadvantaged are actually here in Los Angeles. Think about it. I mean, that's just, you know, 1/2 of all of them, of all the most disadvantaged census tracts are in LA County. So we knew that that had to be at the core of our work. And we also knew that, you know, that is just a statistic. That's not people's lives affected on the ground. But that leads to real and significant disproportionate outcomes in terms of public health and life expectancy. We know that 1/4 of Black children in LA County suffer from asthma, which is just astounding and frankly wrong. And we're seeing this play out now, right, with COVID, of course, where infection rates and rates of death are much higher in communities of color. So we knew also that these disproportionate impacts are not an accident or by coincidence. They're not driven by some individual behaviors, but they're really the direct result of historic, in some cases institutionalized, and in some cases ongoing racism in our policies and our programs and our institutions. And these are policies, of course, you've all know, things like restrictive covenants and redlining, and now the sacred cow of single family zoning, which really is contrived as exclusionary zoning to keep low income people and people of color out of certain neighborhoods. And it's these kinds of policies, as well as the deliberate cleaving, of course, of low income communities of color by freeways and other infrastructure, that's led to these disproportionate impacts. So we knew that going in. And the first thing we did was say, we really need to just get the learned experience of people on the ground. So before we ever even wrote a word of the R County plan, we did something the government doesn't usually do, which is to go out and talk to people. And we went all over the county. We had more than 1,000 people in our workshops and fora and meetings. We gathered some 6,000 ideas. And the way we did that was deliberate as well. And that is by hiring 5 environmental justice organizations to actually help us get to folks who are usually underrepresented or outright missed, or even worse, deliberately ignored. So we wanted to get to people who don't usually engage on sustainability planning, because that's how you get to real equity. And one of the things, of course, that we learned in that process was, no surprise, everything is connected to everything else, which is why if you look at the R County plan, which was adopted by the Board of Supervisors last year, actually just about a year ago this month, it's organized around 12 intersectional goals, not by topic area. So just to to get to your question, of course, the pandemic and the fight for racial justice have both impacted our work. And unfortunately, some things that had been prioritized, like phasing out single-use plastics, moving the million people that are in the unincorporated areas to 100% renewable energy, actually lifting young voices to create a youth climate commission. All of those things are on hold for right now, but I'm certain we're going to get back to them. But I also think there's a flip side, and that may be the bright side of all of this. You know, conscious raising around issues of racism is important. So that's a positive that's come out of this. And, you know, we're just starting to reimagine. I don't know, I've heard, Francis, you talk about this, what our neighborhoods could be if the streets actually served people and not cars. So I'll stop there and just want to say thanks again for being part of this dialogue, and my esteemed colleagues whom I respect and adore.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. And you opened a lot of doors into a lot of topics that I hope we'll be able to get to at least some of. And as you said, your esteemed colleagues, you all know each other. You work together a lot. You've on the one hand developed separate plans for for your departments, but they absolutely do overlap. As I understand it, the city plan preceded the county plan and was very much an inspiration for some of its themes. So let's go to the city of LA, and Lauren Faber O'Connor, Chief Sustainability Officer at the city. In her role, she is driving the implementation of Mayor Garcetti's Green New Deal for LA. That is a global model for local action to confront the climate crisis. Lauren also works on building collaboration through Climate Mayors. That's a coalition chaired by Mayor Garcetti of over 400 US mayors committed to US leadership on climate change, and C40, an international network of cities raising the bar on climate action. Lauren, such a pleasure to see you, in the Zoomosphere. Please, tell us about what the city's doing and explain how it interrelates with what Gary just told us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frances. It's good to see you too, and all our friends in the audience, and USGBC. Hats off to you guys for getting this done, and it's in a really, really engaging way. So thank you. Yeah, there was, across all the people on our panel, has been historically and continues to be a good amount of cooperation, collaboration, coordination, because we are, one region, and, the lived experience of people we're trying to serve is that, they don't necessarily pay attention to when they're crossing over from one city to the next, often even one county to the next, especially when it comes to the work that Metro does. And, when it comes to serving our population on a water and power standpoint, for the most part, people want to be served affordably, served cleanly, and that's it. And so we really, our intention is to make people's lives as easy as possible, as healthful, as engaging, and high quality as possible. But it's starting from people are starting from very, very different places, as Gary very aptly recognized. The plan, LA's Green New Deal, that the mayor released a year and a half ago, built off of LA's Sustainable City Plan that was released back in 2015. So yes, this has been kind of an ongoing pathway for us, but it's really, I think, the engagement between the city and the county leading up to both of our plans being released last year. And you can see, I think, such amazing alignment that was really a testament to our own internal coordination and the work of stakeholders who were, working across both of our processes, if you will. LA's Green New Deal was a product of a year's worth of stakeholder engagement, workshops on particular items, and it really did bring to light, what the priorities are of, again, the people that we're trying to serve, and what the opportunity and responsibility of a city like Los Angeles is, where, in particular, we own and operate our own municipal utility, which is the largest municipal utility in the country. We own and operate the Port of Los Angeles, one of the largest port complexes in the country, and the LA World Airports. And so these are huge operation centers, economic centers, and they have a big role to play in the quality of our environment. And they all come within under city control. So it's a great amount of responsibility and a great amount of opportunity that a city like LA has. And Mayor Garcetti takes that extraordinarily seriously. That what we're doing is in the best interest of our residents, but that we can serve as a model to the world, because if COVID-19 has showed us anything, we are all interconnected and we cannot escape that, and we have to embrace that. And it has brought our connections closer. And I can talk a little bit more about that later, about how the mayor has been able to leverage relationships globally to deploy best practice at a moment's notice when it comes to COVID-19. And in fact, our relationships that are grounded in a climate commitment have yielded a lot of that ability for close and rapid coordination around the world. LA's Green New Deal is really grounded in 4 key principles that we continue to harken back to, which is ambition and urgency, that we must act with great ambition and great urgency on the climate emergency, and that our work is indeed grounded in equity and focused on communities of greatest need, and that the programs that we develop to meet our goals and targets are accessible and targeted for those communities. And that as we move into a green energy economy, a green economy overall, as we focus on building up new markets and new economic development, that we focus very, very acutely on equitable and just transition, where we are looking at changes in the workforce, our existing workforce, as well as the opportunity that we have as we're building new economies and doing economic development, that we bring people, vulnerable populations into the workforce who maybe have previously had trouble joining the workforce, are hard to target, and that we have the ability to do that proactively. So ambition and urgency, equity, workforce, and green jobs, and that we as a municipal government, given the powers that I've just laid out, that we do everything we can to lead by example. LA City, has the ability to move markets with the decisions that we make, and we have to take that very seriously, and we have to lead by example. When we were doing our stakeholder engagement, the foundation of that intersection between environment, economy, and equity had already been laid by the Sustainable City Plan. That our environmental plan was actually looking at everything from the traditional environmental issues of clean energy, clean water, clean transportation, but really about how those programs are deployed in the broader context of our community in terms of housing and mobility access, resilience and food access, all these things together that really touch on every part of one's life. And that is truly what gets us to a sustainable city. One of the most participated or largest kind of attendance of workshops that we had was when we were focused on food, healthy food access, and really just speaks to what people can relate to in their daily lives and what touches them. And so we went from having food be a part of our Sustainable City Plan in 2015 to dedicating an entire chapter just to healthy food and food access and food systems in Los Angeles. And again, that's also building on lessons learned and examples from around the country and around the world. But we took a very deliberate approach to not only opening LA's Green New Deal with equity and environmental justice, but demonstrating throughout the plan, and you can see throughout the plan, how our equity initiatives are interwoven. We really wanted to strike a balance of making sure we were lifting up environmental justice as a top priority, opening the entire plan with it, but that it's not just sitting on its own, that it has to be woven into every goal and aspect of our plan, whether that has to do with how we deliver clean energy, how we deliver local, resilient, clean water, transportation programs. And when it comes to the climate emergency, I'll just end with, though it is all of those things, we also had to, and heard very loud and clear, that we have to be laser focused on meeting the demands of this moment, of this climate emergency, of the 10 years that we have left, to avoid catastrophic climate change that we know is already and will continue to disproportionately impact people of color, low income, vulnerable communities. So we couch that most simply, very simply, and practically oversimply, but helps us with our goals of the 5 zeros, which is a zero carbon grid, zero carbon transportation, zero carbon buildings, zero waste, and zero wasted water. And that, I think, has also served as an example of how to really, when we are talking just about the greenhouse gas component, that those are the things you have to target, and people can really understand that and relate to that around the world. And I think it's helped other cities structure their plans, understanding the greenhouse gas mandate, but also how that filters into all other aspects of people's lives. And we can get into some specific initiatives as well as we go on, but I'll turn it back over to you, Frances.
Well, I have to say, just listening to both of you, I'm amazed at the complexity and the largeness of these plans. Here we are at USGBC. I think this is the 18th year of the conference, if I'm right, Ben. And forgive me if I'm simplifying it, but back in 18 years ago, if you put the word sustainability in front of people, if they even understood the word, it would probably bring to mind energy efficiency. It might bring to mind solar panels. It might bring to mind wind farms. Here we are talking about it, taking on society, taking on urban economies. It's become sustainability, as in the way that you two have just outlined it, weaves into sort of every layer of our lives. So I think we need to all sort of understand that. And in terms of you all and your mandates, you know, one of your mandates is obviously to communicate to people what you are trying to achieve through your plans. And I imagine that's quite an interesting challenge, is how you condense down these ecosystemic approaches that you have to a very clear message. I can understand why people would say food, you know, because food's pretty relatable. Okay, so let's go with great pleasure to Nancy Sutley. She needs no introduction because you can see her logo right above her right shoulder. There she is. She's with the LADWP. She is in fact the Senior Assistant General Manager of External and Regulatory Affairs, which is a long way of saying that she's got the top job. And Chief Sustainability Officer at LADWP. Incredible bio here. She previously served as Chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality. She was one of the chief architects of President Obama's 2013 Climate Action Plan. Prior posts include Deputy Mayor for Energy and Environment for the City of Los Angeles. She's a member of the California State Water Resources Control Board, and she's Senior Policy Advisor for the Senior Policy Advisor for the US EPA during the Clinton administration. Welcome, Nancy, and explain how your plan intersects with the other plans.
Sure. Well, thanks. And thanks to USGBC and my colleagues on the panel. Very happy to be here with my giant blue background. Yeah, so Lauren mentioned LADWP, largest municipal owned utility in the country. We serve water and electricity to the city of Los Angeles. And really, as Lauren was talking about the LA's Green New Deal, a lot of the underpinnings of that plan really involve the choices that LADWP is making now and into the future. And what we're really talking about is a historic transformation of the way that we provide water and electricity to the residents of Los Angeles, and that again the choices we make underpin whether LA will meet the goals of zero carbon grid, zero carbon buildings, zero carbon transportation, zero wasted water. We'll stay away from the zero waste, that's somebody else's issue, but we're all part of one city family. And so how we do that, and I'll focus primarily on the power side, is really about this historic transformation of where LADWP looked like and still to some extent looks like a very typical US utility. A lot of the power generation comes from fossil fuels, and as we're trying to meet these goals, we really have this ambitious plan followed by investments, and they are real. They are getting off of coal, increasing the amount of renewable energy on our system, not just giant solar panel projects in the desert, but really taking advantage of the opportunity for solar inside the city of Los Angeles, helping transform our transportation and our buildings by having clean electricity be the thing that powers our transportation system and our buildings, and helping our customers reduce their energy use. Helps us, it helps our system, and it helps people save money. It addresses equity issues, and so as we look at how we go forward with these plans, I think Los Angeles is diverse in every possible way you can think about that word. It's diverse in terms of our population, in terms of our economy, in terms of languages spoken, in terms of wealth and lack of wealth. And we have to serve everybody, and we have to serve everybody reliably and resiliently, and do it at an affordable price. And LADWP has been doing that really for over 100 years. And how we do this as we go forward with these ambitious goals is critically important. to keep an eye on how this impacts every one of our 1.5 million electric customers that represent the 4 million residents of Los Angeles and all the businesses in the city of Los Angeles. And so one of the ways we've been doing that is by actually being very deliberate about looking at the equity impacts of how we operate in our programs. So we have a whole program around measuring the equity impacts, and then trying to make sure that we're not just measuring how our programs and our services affect different parts of the city and different people within the city, but really trying to do something about it. Our plans and our investments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions also reduce pollution coming from our power plants. And so we have to look at how we're running the system to make sure we're not overburdening one part of the city versus another part of the city. And also recognizing that if, as we move to more use of electricity as a transportation fuel, transportation related air pollution is the biggest source of air pollution within Los Angeles. And so we can help, in a sense, be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Something else we've been doing for a number of years now is really working with community-based organizations to make sure that we're tapping into them to reach out to our residents, because we can't do it ourselves. We don't even know how to do it ourselves to reach this very diverse city and this very diverse community. So we have been in partnership with community-based organizations. We support them to help us do outreach to our residents to make sure they know what's going on at LADWP and how we can be of help to them. And then finally, really thinking about jobs and workforce. We are a large employer, and we provide jobs that have helped generations of Angelenos move into the middle class. And we want to continue to do that, to be that opportunity for Angelenos to move into the middle class. But we also see this tremendous opportunity as we transform our power system to one that's largely reliant on renewable energy, on clean sources of energy, that there are tremendous opportunities for jobs, and to make sure that we're reaching out into the community so that everybody sees an opportunity for themselves to be part of this clean energy economy. So we have to be very deliberate and intentional about that. And so we're making progress. We've cut our greenhouse gas emissions in half, basically. By 2030, we will have reduced them by 80%. And by the mid-2030s, LADWP will be about 97% greenhouse gas emission free. And so that's good for Los Angeles, and it's good for the planet. So I'll stop there.
Well, great to hear from you, Nancy, and messages are coming in as you three have been talking, and I can just tell you all that you amazing leadership is what you all offer, says one audience member. And Ben reminds me that this is the 19th year of USGBC. But anyway, let's go to Dr. Chris Liban. He's going to wrap our presentations, and then we'll go over to some of the questions that I have and some of the questions that are coming in. Chris, are you hearing us? You are joining us from Indiana, just to attest to the upside of the telecommuted conference here. There is a plus. You were able to get your son to university and be at a conference all at the same time. Fantastic. So anyway, really delighted to have you join us. Chris Liban, you oversee LA Metro's environmental and sustainability programs as their Chief Sustainability Officer, as well as the operations of the agency's EV charging network. Chris currently serves on the LA City Board of Transportation Commissioners and the LA County Beach Commission. You were recently appointed by the California State Treasurer to help develop California's green bonds policy and standards. And you're a civil engineer, currently chair of the American Society of Civil Engineers Committee on Sustainability, previously served as a member of the US Environmental Protection Agency's National Advisory Council for Environmental Policy and Technology. One thing I would love everybody in sustainability to do is find a way of having less syllables. There's so many syllables in all these words. Anyway, Chris, welcome. Tell us about your work at Metro and bring us up to date with the equity proposals and.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Francis, for that introduction, and and thank you, Ben, and the rest of the USGBC team to be here, being here today, along with the rest of our esteemed panelists from Gary to Lauren to Nancy. I've known them for a while, and we've worked together for many years to make this region, to make our communities more sustainable. For LA Metro in particular, I just want to echo everything that everybody has heard so far. But I just want to add a few things that LA Metro in particular has been doing. I just want to add the things that are unique to us as an organization, and maybe focus a little bit on what it really means, not only what this plan that we're about to go to the board with really means in terms of the overall, not only sustainability, but resiliency of the region. So let me just start by saying that for those who are not necessarily familiar with our organization, we actually plan, we construct, we operate and maintain, as well as provide funding, for transportation systems here in Los Angeles. But please don't pigeonhole us, if you may, that we're just a transportation agency. The way that we look at this, the way our board members are looking at this, that we're the backbone of the region. We provide access, and mobility to all the constituents of our elected leaders here in Los Angeles County. We provide the opportunity, the economic opportunity for those folks to actually go from one place to another to earn a living, the opportunity for folks to go from one place to another to actually experience the ocean, for example, or experience the nature centers where they don't see those kinds of things in their neighborhoods. And then finally, in terms of connectivity and access, we also provide an opportunity for folks to actually go and access fresh food areas. Fresh food access is one of the things that we're doing as well in my programs, allowing us to actually bring those transit-dependent communities to those locations where there's nothing like that in their community. So the other thing I just wanted to mention as well is that while there are emissions that are associated with our agency, we also bring out and actually reduce the amount of vehicle miles traveled, the amount of solo drivers, in our communities. And if you look at that, our system in the context, transport, our particular business is actually a net displacer of greenhouse gas emissions. And in fact, using the American Public Transportation Association protocols, and we calculate this as approximately almost 100 to 200,000 metric tons of GHG emissions displaced, if you consider the amount of vehicle miles traveled that we have removed as a result of our business. The other thing too with us as an organization is that our sustainability program has been in place since 2007. And prior to that, because we are a constructing agency, we have always looked for ways to reduce our impact on the environment through not only the CEQA process, but since I came to the agency in 2003, and since then, we have been really looking for ways to work with local communities, work with local sources of these commodities that we use for construction. At the same time, look for ways to have cost-effective means to reduce our operational costs to reduce our environmental impact, our carbon footprint, and so on and so forth. So back in 2007, we developed what we call the Metro Sustainability Implementation Plan. The plan, as you do the math, is 13 years old. And we have, in the last 2 years, have been developing what we call as an update to that plan. We're calling that plan now as moving beyond sustainability. In our mind, at least, in what we have seen in the metrics that we've reported in the last 10 years, LA Metro not only is helping out in displacing greenhouse gas emissions across the region, but also has a lot of examples that we can point out to in terms of our internal operational sustainability. And that includes financial sustainability. I'll go to that in a couple of seconds, in a couple of minutes here. But moving beyond sustainability, why is it called that way? That this 10-year plan that we are putting out for board approval next month. Moving beyond sustainability, because now that we have achieved and have pretty much made folks aware, not only in our industry, but in our communities, of what we're doing and have implemented those across the board, we would like our industry, we would like the other organizations other than transit to actually work with us, help with us, help us, and make us understand what else are we missing, what else can we do as an organization. And then going back to the finance part, it's not a secret, this organization is going to be in a deficit. And actually we're in a deficit right now, so other public agencies, we're projecting about $2 billion worth of deficit in the next year. And this is known and it's part of public record. But this program in particular, we have been working through in the last decade in terms of our finances, in terms of monetizable values in our programs, in terms of carbon credits. And for all of the revenues, for all the grants, for all of the incentives that we have received from our partners and from our utilities, this program has been actually net zero in cost since 2017. And this program has brought in over $100 million in revenues to LA Metro. And the $100 million in revenues are in the Green Fund. We call it the Green Fund. And we reinvest all of those dollars into projects that we have here in the agency. It's not only sustainable infrastructure projects, it's not only operational and cost efficiency projects, not only energy efficiency projects, but emerging projects that we can get our hands on to ensure that we're continually improving in the things that we do. And then the last thing I just want to mention in here is that in terms of the equity piece, we recently hired, we as an agency recently hired an equity officer. A couple of years, 3 years ago, our board has adopted what we call the equity platform. And the equity officer and I had been working together in terms of understanding, again, what else can we do over and above what is already expected of us, what's already in the ground, what's already been implemented. And then how do we actually fold all of these things? We've been very active and participate in the American Public Transportation Association working groups. There is a document that's out there right now in terms of the economic and social sustainability metrics that we can measure ourselves against those metrics and help us understand, again, for continual improvement, what else can be done. And then in terms of the engineering and construction of our infrastructure and how can we make that better, we're working together with the American Society of Engineers on what we call a sustainable infrastructure standard. It's the foundational standard that's going to be universally accepted, we hope, and will assure us as an organization as we build more of these infrastructures that they're at least sustainable. And if people want to do anything above and beyond that, we adopt LEED, we adopt Envision, and then we go from there. And then last but not the least, we're also working with our communities in terms of workforce development. We invest in our communities by offering training, not only for them to understand our vision, but at the same time, help communities understand how what we're doing relates to what they're concerned with. You know, if they're concerned more with equity issues and environmental justice issues, what does that really mean in terms of the infrastructure that we're building? If they're concerned more with the service and with how our work connects with their health concerns, what does that really mean for them? And so these training programs that we've developed, there are more than 70 of them offered through our agency, and some of those training programs are in cooperation with USGBC. We're trying to help everybody understand the jargon, help everybody understand that, you know, we're in this together, and that help us understand at the same time, you know, what are the best practices out there, because even those communities that come from the developing nations who are part of our community here in Los Angeles, we can learn a lot from them, and we learn from them by actively reaching out from them and to them, you know, in the things that we do. So let's stop there for now. And again, you know, there's a lot of overlap in what we do with the county, with the city, with Nancy's working at DWP, and all of us are working together, not only for our agencies, but for everybody in this region, and for those who are looking at the examples that we have here, for those people to bring that to their communities as well as lessons learned. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Chris. I think it's a great privilege for everyone attending to be able to hear from all four of you. And again, the ambition and complexity of these plans is quite something. But anyway, here we are at this point in our lives that many of us could never have imagined. COVID-19, and then as we all understand, the sort of massive raising of consciousness around issues of equity. The two are obviously converging in so many ways, but you know, let's sort of talk about reality right now. We're looking around, we're seeing, you have alluded to it, Chris, massive drop of ridership on Metro, thousands of people who've lost their jobs, you know, sales taxes not going into city coffers. Can we talk, can I hear from each of you sort of in brief, sort of one kind of sort of bad hit you've had to take from the budget cuts, and then one way in which perhaps something positive, unexpected has come out of the cuts? You know, in what way might have you made lemonade out of lemons? If we start back in the order we started, and let's just keep it brief now, because we've got about 15 minutes through to the end of the session. Gary, back to you.
Great. Well, thank you for the question. And yeah, I think I alluded to some of them, so I'll be quick on the lemon side and more on the lemonade. You know, we have had to postpone our Youth Climate Commission. That funding is not here this year. We've put aside going to 100% renewable energy for the county, unincorporated areas, and we've put our single-use plastics ordinance on hold. So those are all a result of either the economic circumstances or just the public health circumstances. But you know, the lemonade side, and there certainly is a lemonade side, I think people are starting to understand the value of local neighborhood services and community, and really sort of thinking about resilience and how we support one another. I know neighbors, you know, check on neighbors, drop food off at their neighbor's door, and you need that kind of resilience in order to get through any future disaster, whether it's an earthquake or whatever happens to be. And we're also seeing people, and I think this is going to hold, because I think the whole telecommute is going to hold, not to the degree that it is now, but there's going to be a lot of that. And people are going to want to be able to walk and bicycle in their neighborhood and want to get to a cafe and get to services. And so I think we're going to start seeing people demand more neighborhood communities that are more serving of people and not cars.
Nancy.
Yeah, I'll be quick. A couple of things I would just say. First of all, you know, I think, you know, initially we were worried about sort of the impact of COVID, of people getting sick on our ability to provide service. And I would just say that we've really had no impact on providing service. And that's really a testament to everybody who works at LADWP really taking this seriously and making sure people are staying healthy to keep the lights on and the water running. Obviously, you know, this is a huge economic impact on Angelenos and people who've lost their jobs. We are not disconnecting people for non-payment of their bills, at least through the end of the year. So that has an impact on our revenue. We don't really have a mechanism to write those off entirely, but we are deferring the disconnections. So, and working with our customers on payment plans and things like that can help them manage. We have a number of programs that are aimed at low-income customers of providing them assistance. The state does as well. So we're just trying to make sure that all of those programs are as robust as they can be. And you know, so we have to manage the sort of revenue side of it, but we want to make sure that we can continue to provide service to our customers. On the making lemonade, I would just say, give you one small example. Thank you to all the parents who are have their kids at home. We've had a program with LAUSD around energy efficiency and water conservation in the schools, of upgrading the schools, and we've been able to actually, while the schools have been closed, not only to continue that program, but to really try to accelerate the pace of that program and take advantage of this unfortunate circumstance where the schools are closed to get that done.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Lauren, I switched. I went from the county to the DWP, back to the city.
Oh, that's okay. You know, this situation is completely unprecedented. It has challenged the city to take on roles that are roles we haven't typically taken on, are not sort of within our charter. We don't necessarily have, therefore don't have necessarily have institutions built to be able to deliver, yet we've done that. And so I think it's been an incredible lesson and testament to the team in our office who have just been putting in night and day to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep people safe and healthy. But that has meant spending a lot of money also that we don't have. So, we're very hopeful that the federal government can come in and will stick with the commitment to come in and help cover some of the many, over hundreds of millions of dollars that we have spent on COVID emergency response and standing up new institutions and efforts. But in terms of the budget losses or just the kind of how things have changed, we had, I think, a lot of big plans for community outreach and engagement on programs related to, the work with the county on zero waste, related to our building sector and creating, more affordable, healthy buildings, particularly in low-income communities, for our work around fossil fuel-free streets, which is an effort that through C40, the mayor committed to, creating a fossil fuel-free zone in the city as it relates to transportation infrastructure and transportation experience in these neighborhoods. And, we're really eager to go out into the community and talk about these efforts and really hear about the needs and interests to develop and tailor programs. I would say, so that's been one that we've really been having to go back to the drawing board of how to do that, how to do community engagement and outreach and constituent input in a really robust way in this kind of format. In terms of the lemonade, I want to make clear that obviously no one wants to make a crisis go to waste, but we can't underestimate the level of crisis that we are currently in and have been experiencing. And I should have started even recognizing the moment that we're in and just giving my heart out to people, the 1,000+ people that are on this event right now. And just, I really hope and wish everyone and their families and their colleagues well, because it's really unprecedented time. So thank you for your time and attention. But I think I put in something about But yeah, talking about the mobility side, where you would think that, LA is dedicated to a car culture and our public space dedicated to cars, but this has really been a moment to dedicate public space back to people. And, we have installed a few dozen miles of slow streets throughout the city in neighborhoods where cars have become sort of guests on our roads, but they're really being, reallocated to people. We have installed over 40 miles of bike lanes throughout the city during the Safer at Home order, and bus lanes as well. And I'm sure you'll hear Chris talk about some of the expediting of metro projects by being able to close down traffic for longer periods of time. It's really exciting to be able to see some of that work done where we are trying to take advantage of the moment, but it goes even bigger than that. And, as we talked about with equity and, how sustainability and climate change touches so much of our work, now we're having conversations about universal basic income. Now we're having conversations about, the essential workforce and the voices and needs of our essential workforce who are disenfranchised, historically, but we know that they are some of the most, inherent supporters of a green and healthy planet because of how it impacts them directly. And so, empowering those voices with services, with resources, and with, just the time and attention of the critical work that they're doing to enable us to be at home, I think is also something that I really hope is able to last beyond the term of this pandemic.
Yeah, so interesting. The overnight adaptation to slower streets, which were quite a political battle in a lot of neighborhoods, has been quite something to behold. You just mentioned Chris, who has actually vanished. Are you still there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, you are. Okay. I can't see your smiling face anymore. But anyway, Chris, you were just given a setup by Lauren in terms of construction on Metro, and so why don't you just briefly tell us about that?
Yeah. So thank you, Lauren, for the shout out to our essential workers in the construction industry. We've been really busy, not only in working through all of the expansion of our system, but looking at, working through and providing this essential service, through our operations department, so that, the folks that I was talking about earlier can continually go from one top part of the city to the other part of the city, especially those who are transit dependent. But, that aside, and that's really great, and for our organization to provide that kind of service and accelerate those projects. But at the same time, we have also adopted this principle of adaptive design, and what that really means is that on twofold. On one hand, in terms of what we can afford. Right now, we'll build those according to what we can afford and what we know, but still marching towards our 2030 and 2050 climate change goals. And at the same time, it's given us an opportunity to actually rethink, how we're doing business here in the agency. Our the strategies that we actually do remain relevant, in the context of a pandemic. Post-pandemic world, in the context of the deficit that we have here, and so there have been regular report outs to our board. Our CEO had put together what we call as a recovery task force, and so these strategies that we're thinking about right now, not only sustainability but transportation as well as our service in general, it forced us to rethink, the things that we're doing as an organization. And, Lauren has touched on some of those ideas already on the transportation side, and Gary had mentioned that as well. Related to power, we're looking at, the lemonade here as well, is looking at, how do we actually create a more resilient LA Metro in terms of energy. And this pandemic has given us an opportunity to really step back, because we will have a hard time going at pace in terms of what we have programmed to do, at least for the next year. While that's true, we're not stopping, but it has given us opportunity to step back and say, hey, how much more can we work with UWP? How much more can we work with the other utilities in terms of our resiliency, in terms of the things that, we may not have an opportunity to do so if not for the issues that we're faced with in terms of the public health crisis and economics. And then last but not the least is this whole context of, again, looking past, 2030, looking past, what we can do in the next 10 years. I mentioned earlier about the success of this program financially. How can we actually reinvest more of those back into the communities that we serve, and make sure that it's not only for LA Metro, but those communities, are actually benefiting more than what we have programmed them to be. So, thank you.
I feel like we've just started the conversation, but we actually now have to end it because time is upon us. I so appreciate, personally, the opportunity to be with you all on this panel. I'm sure I speak for the audience in saying how grateful we are to you all for giving your time to share what you're doing. I would love to direct you if you've got further questions. Ben, are you able to sort of jump in now, Ben, and sort of tell us what people should do if they have more questions or want to follow up with any of the themes raised today?
Sure, absolutely. And first of all, that's part of our responsibility as sort of, leaders of this community, is to help try to answer those questions. And so if anyone has other questions or wants to follow up on some of this discussion, clearly we have challenges ahead of us, but I think you've seen a lot of the strength in the response today and the commitment to not only focusing on our mission, but on equity going forward. And we're happy to help answer those questions and shepherd those as needed. Absolutely.
Well, really, thank you very much, all of you. Gary Gero's Chief Sustainability Officer at the County of Los Angeles, Lauren Faber O'Connor, Chief Sustainability Officer at the City of Los Angeles, Nancy Sutley, Chief Sustainability Officer at LADWP, and Dr. Chris Liban, Chief Sustainability Officer at LA Metro. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you for your time, and thank you, Francis, for your grace and skill at moderating this panel. Much appreciated. And I hope folks can stick around. This is a 2-day event. We've got programming this afternoon as well as tomorrow. And a lot of our programming tomorrow is really highlighting some of the situation that our frontline workers are dealing with, in janitors here in our city. We've also got some great panels highlighting what you can do to bring more nature into your environment to improve your own health right now, as well as how to mitigate fire risk, which is an important issue that hopefully we're all experiencing and looking at right now. And, I wanted to highlight some of the things that were touched on today regarding, the talent that's being showcased just on this panel. We've got great regional talent here, and a lot of the world is really looking at us and the work we're doing when they're looking at how to answer their own challenges when it comes to climate change and resiliency right now. And so I'd invite you to check out our talent portal on our website. We've got green job postings. We feature local employers. There's opportunities for mentorship, as well as recorded content and training that we offer on a weekly basis. And want to remind you to please visit our exhibitor hall. We've got Envision, who Chris mentioned, that provides a certification around sustainable infrastructure, is actually providing free training, and there's a raffle for that. So if you go through our exhibitor hall, it's a scavenger hunt. You yourself could be Envision certified at no cost. So that could be you, the lucky winner. I want to thank our sponsors here at MGBCE. We can't do the work that we do without you. If you're wondering if it's more complicated to put on a virtual conference than the one in real life, the answer is yes. If you have some time, I can explain to you how, and my team would be happy to share their stories with you, not only from today, but over the past months. And then I want to remind you that here this afternoon, we've got some great content. We have the Gathering of the Green Teams, which brings together corporate sustainability folks here in LA every year to really look at how to continue to advance corporate sustainability. We've got Green Team Fundamentals, and then we've got a session after that on data. Our cities session, so looking at people, planet, and profit, priorities for net zero cities. And then our building session, how do we continue to maintain momentum towards our strategic climate goals through reach codes? I know a lot of people are really interested in that topic right now. And then later in the afternoon, we'll also have sessions on learning from resilience from our friends down in Australia. What can we learn from everything they've gone through in the last year, from fires to climate change stressors, and then the continued look at affordable housing and green affordable housing. what are best practices and innovation that we can look at right now that we can use today to make our city have not only more housing options, but when we look at affordable housing, it's a great opportunity for us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions going forward. And then LACCD, who we honored with an award today, is going to highlight how they're bringing net zero carbon commitments to their campuses really over the next few years. They're the largest community college district in the country that's committed to zero carbon here in the future. And then what would life be without a little bit of fun and a little bit of art? So this afternoon from 4:30 to 5, the Reverend Sean Amos is going to grace us with some music. He's a great mix of blues and roots rock and gospel. I love live music. I've really missed that over the past few months, and I'm looking forward to hearing him. You know, sure, we could have had Bono, but no, we went with the Reverend Sean Amos. I just want you to know that. As a reminder, also from 5 to 6, we're featuring happy hours from our branches and committees. You can access those by going through the exhibitor hall. It's just a great chance to connect with people either on a local level or an issue that you're passionate about. So we hope you can join us for that. And with that, I will let you have a little bit of a break here, and hope you go and enjoy some of our upcoming sessions. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
And you. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.